Hello students, this is Professor Russo, and the next ground rule that we are going to discuss is tell the truth. Now, this has been sometimes referred to as the truth-lie ritual. And this is something that has its connection or its nexus to the criminal justice system and to the system of trials in America. In order to be a witness in a case, especially a criminal case, one has to be able to take an oath. And one has to be competent. And in order to do that, the system looks at the witness and evaluates whether that witness is testimonially competent. We call it testimonial competence. If you deconstruct the phrase, what it means is when the witness testifies, are they competent to tell about past events? Are they able? Or is there something that undermines their ability to be an effective witness and a reliable witness? Testimonial competence involves the following factors. Number one, the witness, and it's not just a child witness. We could talk about an adult who might have brain injury, or an adult who has cognitive impairment. This notion of testimonial competence applies to any witness in the court proceeding. So there are four factors that the court looks at. The first factor is, does the witness understand the difference between what is real and what is imagined? That is, can they separate fact from fantasy? The second factor that the court looks at is the witness able to remember past events? Can they remember things that happened a while ago or in the past? And that makes sense because that's what witnesses do. They take the witness stand and they need to provide a narrative about something that happened in the past. The third thing that courts look at is, does the witness appreciate or understand that they have an obligation to tell the truth? And the emphasis is not so much on truth, but obligation. Obligation. Because the last factor is, does the witness understand and appreciate that if they don't tell the truth, they can get in trouble? They can be charged. And among adult witnesses, they can be charged with perjury. So this truth-lie testimonial competence courtroom ritual is really about deception and not so much about educating the witness about what is right or wrong, what they remember that's accurate or inaccurate. You know, in the last ground rule, we talked about making sure that kids appreciate that if the interviewer gets something wrong or makes a mistake or something that is said is wrong, they have to correct that. They have to make sure that the correct information is discussed. Now, that may seem like what we're talking about here, but that's why I differentiate it, and that's how I differentiate it. This evidence rule, and it's an evidence rule, it's not something that's required in forensic interviewing. It's something that has application only in the court system. Prosecutors like to address this issue, but it's not something that's imperative. And it does have some value when you do a forensic interview and it's recorded in some way, video recorded most of the time, when the child expresses themselves in a way that demonstrates that they are testimonially competent. That can be valuable. On the other hand, some children are not competent at the time they do the forensic interview. And at the time of the trial, they may be more mature and they may be able to be demonstrably competent under the evidence rule. Now, whether that video statement can come in or not, that remains to be seen depending upon the jurisdiction, if they have a 10 years hearsay rule or the like. Nevertheless, though, it doesn't have to be something that's included in the forensic interview. So what are the takeaways here? Well, most importantly, you don't have to demonstrate testimonial competence during a forensic interview. You have to demonstrate testimonial competence when a child is going to take the witness stand. Nevertheless, prosecutors and people who judge forensic interviews and others feel it's good practice to at least pursue or investigate this issue during the forensic interview. And there's been some research on this issue over the past 15 years or so. And the preeminent researcher in the field is Professor Tom Lyon, who's at the University of Southern California in the law school. And you're going to see a video clip in this learning module where Professor Lyon talks about some of his recent research. And he explains what best practice is for asking a question about truth telling. And if you think about testimonial competence in the legal system, it's not quite the same as the ground rule we discussed a little while ago, where we want the child to correct us if we say something wrong or if we get something wrong. That's important. We want to make sure that the child is vigilant, and we want to make sure that the child doesn't let us ask questions or suggest anything or agree with something that's not real, something that never happened, or something that's not true. But the notion of testimonial competence and this ground rule of tell the truth is more about deception than getting something wrong. That's what the criminal justice system is concerned with when discussing testimonial competence and the ability to be a witness in a court proceeding. We want to let the witness know that deception is not tolerated. Truth is what must happen in a criminal trial, and if you don't tell the truth, you get in trouble. In any event, there are a number of ways to look at this, and Professor Poole talks about the research in her textbook. So take a look at page 93, where Professor Poole gets into tell the truth as a ground rule. And you can see that I posted it right here, and that's a piece of her page on the tell the truth ground rule. And she references Tom Lyon and other researchers who have looked into this issue. In the forensic interview, we want primarily to let the child know we want them to tell what really happened, to tell what's real and not imagined, what's real and not fantastic, what really happened. And if you look at the video, and you will, of Tom Lyon's recent research, the only formulation that works, the only formulation that deters falsehoods, the only formulation that helps us predict whether children are going to be more honest during an interview is as follows. Danielle, do you promise that you will tell me the truth? The two operative words there are promise and will. Without those words, then you're not going to get the outcomes that the research supports. The research found that the word promise and the word will, used in the formulation that I described to you, are effective in deterring dishonesty. Now, it doesn't rule out dishonesty. It doesn't make children into truth tellers, but there is data that shows that that is more effective at encouraging children to be truthful and results in less deception. And that's important. Now, I want you to read pages 93, 94, and 95 in Professor Poole's textbook, where she discusses the research and some of the dynamics of truth-telling research. And there are a lot of suggestions there, but the one that I advocate is the simple one. Daniela, when we talk today, it's important that you tell me what really happened. The truth is what really happened. Daniela, do you promise that you will tell me the truth today? And see if they agree or assent. And if they do, you move on. Number one, it's not required. Number two, there are a lot of ways to evaluate the credibility or reliability or truthfulness of a forensic interview without relying upon this truth-lie ritual. And there are a variety of different ways to make sure that that child gets it, that they understand it. Some of them really don't have any academic support, and some of them have some support. You'll see in those pages in Professor Poole's book the different kinds of dialogue between a child and a forensic interviewer or a clinician that may have some value. Even Professor Lyon had a long, detailed way of using images and pictures of children with thought bubbles that goes on for 5 or 6 minutes. You may want to do that in a clinical interview, but in a forensic interview, it's not something I recommend. I think it is inefficient, and I don't know that it's effective, and I don't think the research demonstrates that it is effective in dissuading children from being deceptive. The research by Lyon that I shared with you earlier is the only thing I'm aware of, And quite frankly, there are many ways to determine credibility and reliability without having the child recite some incantation and get the incantation.